And okay, we got the recording. And that changed everything for me. So I realized that I could express myself much better through the photographic medium. And from the very beginning, I turned the camera on myself. I have been taking self-portraiture for over 20 years, and my work is also very narrative. And I think that goes back to my upbringing, because we grew up next to my grandmother, and she was an excellent storyteller. And so growing up, she would tell me all these fairy tales from the Brother Grimm and these stories she made up, and that really inspired me. So my work over 20 years has always been narrative, and I have worked in many different bodies of like projects till like the spring of 2020. And that's when New York City went into lockdown with the pandemic, and it was just really devastating for me, as it was for many people around the world. I mean, I feel even emotional now. So I felt like, okay, I needed to change my work. And I was reading all these news about Trump. I was never interested in Trump, but he really interfered with our lives. And then there were the riots, and there was a lot of violence here. And I just felt like I needed to react and sort of like explore the subject in my own way. And I started putting him into a photo montage. And I didn't think I was going to create a whole body of work. I was like, all right, let me try one image. And so I started the image that is behind you. It's called Toys, Toys, Toys. That's where Trump is sitting in a chair. And on one side, there is Putin coming through the wallpaper. It's right behind you on my left. And Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, coming through the wallpaper. So that was the beginning. And the way I actually create this, I come up with a sketch, and I just found this little one. So this, I don't know if you can see. So that's how it starts. I'm sort of making a drawing. I'm trying to figure out where everybody is going. And then I was looking for the heads of Donald Trump and all these political leaders, but I needed a body. So I used my own body. So when you look at these images, they're all my own body. And that was a little bit challenging, because Donald Trump is really tall and a big man, and I'm kind of small and skinny. So for me to sort of pull off these big bodies, so I bought suits and I borrowed ties and shirts from my friends, and I bought a big pair of men's shoes used, so they looked like they were already worn by Donald. And I started dressing up, but it looked like this skinny figure with this big head. So I started making a fat suit. So I built like this fat suit and put pillows under my coat. And then I started doing these performances. And so in a way, I actually created 30 photo montages in 1.5 years. And I had absolutely no intentions of doing this, but every week when I was reading the news, something else kind of ridiculous came up. And so the titles of these images are really important, because I reacted to what was happening each week. I titled it, and then I came up with a little narrative. And then as we were going towards the election, I created the image population 331 million. That was the population at the time of the United States, and candidates, 2 old men and Kanye. And I don't know if you are all familiar with Kanye West, but he's a rapper, right? And so he basically said that he was going to run for president. And I thought it was just really ridiculous that we have 2 men over the age of 70 and a rapper trying to run for president. Obviously, he was never, he didn't get that far. But I created this movie set, and the images on this other side, where Biden comes in on a horse saying hello, and Trump is basically drinking a cup. And there is Kanye on the table, sort of like, oh, what's going on? So it's all kind of ridiculous, but it was a circus. I mean, the whole thing is like, are these our choices? And then the election happened, and as I'm sure, I hope you didn't follow the presidential election because it was just really crazy. Then the recounts for weeks, they were recounting, and we kind of knew that Biden won, but Trump wouldn't give up. So I created this image where Trump is sort of making a fist and wearing a dress, and it's called "It Ain't Over Till the Fat Lady Sings." And that's a saying in the United States. It's like, I'm not giving up till the end, right? So there's more recounts and more recounts. I'm like, I am not giving up, right? So I created that, and then it was just going one image into the other. Then eventually we knew that he lost. I mean, he still doesn't think he did, but I created then the image saying, hand over the keys, not your house. That's when he stands in front of the White House with his wife, Melania. And I sort of studied their body language. And often what happened is when they were walking together, he was trying to hold her hands. And so she's like sort of pulling away from him. So in this image, I also looked at the body language, sort of she's like pulling away, and so he's like sort of extending his arm, and I put some little bunnies just to make it even more ridiculous. And as we were going on during the election, I started putting myself back into the work. So I have this conversation with Donald, the one right behind you, where I'm sitting on the table with him, and I'm sort of like showing him all the work that I was doing. And clearly he was not amused. He's like pointing at it, not happy, right? I'm like, but you know, I did this. I spent a lot of time and part of my life doing this, and you're not liking it, right? So I created that. And to the left of it, there is the image that I did on January 21st. That was the day when he actually left the White House. So I put some political leaders in it, you know, Queen Elizabeth and Angela Merkel, and the president of France, and of the prime minister of Canada, basically waving him goodbye. And so, you know, so it's sort of like, okay, good riddance, we're done. And then more to the right, there are the 3 empty suits. That's when I sort of started transitioning and taking Trump out. So it's called Nothing But an Empty Suit. And I don't know if that translates in English. It doesn't even translate into German, but sometimes I hear people say, okay, the person is really nothing but nice clothes, right? There's nothing behind, or there's nothing underneath. So I created that. So what's kind of funny is, like, with these bodies that are bigger, my hands, I mean, I cannot disguise my hands. My hands are rather thin, and they're female, and with these, you know, male bodies. So that is kind of something I worked with. I'm like, okay, I can't change this. I'm just gonna let that happen. And in a way, it just brings in another aspect of making it more sarcastic and in a way more ridiculous. And then in December of last year, I finished the project, and that was basically 1.5 years I worked on it. And I finished the 30 montages. I started going into printing, because in the beginning of the pandemic, I was building them on the computer because we were in complete lockdown, as you were probably as well. I couldn't get paper. I couldn't get my work to get printed for like half a year or more. There was just like complete shutdown. So I was everything open again. I could actually print them. So there's several prints that I cut out, and then I paint around it, and then it goes on the background surface. So there's several images on top of each other. And that I just recently did. Most of what you see I put together within the past like 5-6 months as we were going back into printing and I was catching up. So these are all new photo montages that I personally have not seen framed. So Diana and I, we were going back and forth like, okay, what frames? And she was amazing. It was like within hours, she's like, I'm bringing it to the framer tomorrow. I'm like, oh my God, I can't wait to see them because personally, I haven't seen them framed yet. And then this year, in the beginning of this year, I started taking Donald Trump out completely and I went back into photo montages, just using myself and creating more like these surreal worlds. And one of them is Leo's visit with the fish. I think that's behind me or in front of you. I can't see exactly, but I think it's, yes, it's behind me, right? And that is Leo's visit. I couldn't find a better title, but I also have to remember which image I'm referring to because I'm creating so much work. And Leo is the cat on the floor. And Leo lives in Switzerland. He's my mom's cat. And so basically, I had this little dream. I mean, I had a dream about fish. I dreamed quite a lot about fish. So I created this little scene where I put Leo in visiting us here in the US. And the two kitties that are sitting left and right of me are my cat. That's Lily and Bono. They're actually two brothers that I rescued. They were like tiny little kittens running on the street in New York City and like, okay, you need a home. And I was, trapping them and taking them home. So they're sometimes in my work. And I really love bringing animals in. They sort of create another energy. They're kind of surreal little things where I also can work with scale. And also the reason why I like doing photo montages is I can bring my upbringing in Europe and my life in the United States together. So when I go home to Switzerland, I photograph, my mom's cat and objects and the landscape. And then I come back to the US and I photograph objects here and I photograph myself. And then I bring it together and I build these otherworldly sort of images. And many of them are very dreamlike, very surreal. And, it's very open, whatever you want to get out of it. It's like, telling you a little story and then you can, ponder and maybe it brings up something in your memory. And then one of the images that is next to it, also behind me, is the one with the sheep. And that is called herd immunity. And I don't know, has anybody gone to Lago? I don't think it's that far from Milan. Lago, Italy. Yeah, it's north of Venice. Yeah. Yes, you have been there. A friend of mine has a house there and I've visited Lago many times and spent summers there and Christmas, and it's just a beautiful space. And I photographed the landscape. So the background in that image is from Lago, and it was taken in medium format film, and I scanned the negative and then digitalized it. And then I photographed the sheep, and I actually have it here. This is the sheep that I photographed from all different angles, and I lit from different angles. So this one little guy, there's only one. And I started putting that in, and I also started playing with scale, making the head much bigger and the body smaller. And then there is one more, a new one. It's called the crucifixion. And I really love painting because that is my background. So I was thinking of how can I get this triptych of the crucifixion into a piece. And that's like the work I'm doing, like trying to take also paintings or inspirations from painters and put that into my own work. And that's how I came up with that piece. And that painting actually hangs in the Metropolitan Museum of Art here in New York City. And my brother was visiting and we were going to the museum, and he had a camera with me. I usually don't have the camera on me. I'm a back photographer. I said, hey, can you photograph this painting for me? I need it. So he could use and reuse it that way. So I have like a whole archives of cats and legs and heads and hands. And then I go through my archive and then I just shoot new images that I need for a particular piece. Yeah. Yeah, but that's sort of the process. And also the size is kind of dictated by how large I can do or work in order to still cut it out and put it on the paper. Of course, if you just take a file, you can print it very big, but then it becomes tricky to do cuts. Was fitting for the work, and yeah, so that's my process, and I'm happy to answer some questions. I don't want to overwhelm you with the work, but I'm happy to answer some questions if you have some technical questions, or like the wallpaper also, that I may want to mention that many of the wallpapers are from a doll house, chairs and dolls. So what I do is I buy these pieces of wallpaper that are in the same ratio as what our wallpaper is, and then I flat scan it and digitalize it, and then I make images out of it. So it's like a process of scanning and reworking things, and usually it takes several weeks to create an image because there are so many different wallpapers I could use. So there's all these different scenarios and different versions I have till I settle. And then also if I print something bigger, it comes forward in the image. And if I print it smaller, it goes back, right? So I work with this ratio of moving and pulling. Yeah.
Se qualcuno vuole fare domande a
Any question?
Avete qualche curiosità sul suo lavoro? No.
No, there is something I would like. Ciao Cornelia and Paolo.
Hi Paolo, nice to meet you.
Is your imagery is really funny and interesting at the very same time, and you push people to explore your work. But I'm wondering how long it takes for you in kind of painstaking work to match your idea with the doing and make that happen.
Okay. So as I said before, like I come up with an idea, and then as I was showing you, like these drawings, I make many drawings and I start putting images in and like objects in and taking it out. So the work becomes more complicated now as I keep going. And so some of them usually take 2 to 3 weeks if I have a lot of elements. And then also what I have is like I have an idea in my head, right? And then everything changes. I also have to be flexible. The person is walking towards, and then when I put it in the space, it doesn't work. And then I have to think of something else. Maybe I have to shrink it. Maybe I have to make the piece longer. Maybe it has to be square. So there is a lot of testing. So often like several weeks of testing, trying different versions till I'm happy with it. So it's a long process, but I don't want people to look at it and thinking, oh, it's a long process, because it should look effortless, like, oh yeah, I had this idea and this is what happened, but that's not the case. So I don't know if I answered your question.
You did, thank you.
It looks effortless, and it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. It's supposed to. I don't want to see your, I don't want you to see my sweat and tears in it. Or sometimes I close the door, I'm like, oh my God, I wasted 2 days on this and it's going in the trash. But I mean, that's normal. I mean, I don't know, several of you may be artists, so it's in any medium, whether or not it's sculpture or painting, right? You work on it for days, and some paintings take probably years, and then it's like, oh, it didn't work out. That's just the way it is. And then sometimes you get lucky, and you just have to work a lot that you get lucky enough.
Okay.